Okay, so I have a piece of wood in my lathe. It's a mystery piece of wood. Could be ash. It's got an ashy look to it. It's a piece that I got out the scrap bin at the carpentry store in Naas here in Ireland, so I don't know what it is, but it'll do for what we're going to use it for. This piece of wood in particular is 130 mil, which in old school is about 5 inches long, and we're about 3.5 inches, well, we'll say 3 inches square, because by the time we've gone round it's probably going to be a 3-inch cylinder. We're going to turn a box, a lidded box. We're doing it on a faceplate, so I have the piece of wood already fixed to the faceplate, just to save a bit of time. We're just going to round it off, basic round box, hollow it out. We'll use different tools for hollowing out, just so you can so I can show you the difference. I'm just going to start off by rounding this piece of wood off. We're going to start with the 1-inch crown spindle roughing gouge. Because it's a faceplate, it's well fixed, it's quite a well balanced piece of wood. I'll be turning quite high. Now it's entirely up to you. When you're turning, you'll get used to speeds that you like. I tend to be quite a fast turner, not as in I get the projects done fast, because we all know that's not true, but I like to spin the lathe fast. I'm going about 1500 RPM there at the moment. Okay, so spindle roughing gouge, flat down on my tool rest. So presenting my tool, I'm flat with the spine straight down, and I'm slightly angled so that I'm rubbing the bevel of the gouge, and then just raising the handle up, and that's where it starts to cut. And I'm just working my way along the full length of the piece, backwards and forwards. Now, this piece of wood we're actually cutting end grain on the side. It's just the way that this piece of wood is cut, and it is actually a really hard piece of wood. I've turned my roughing gouge so that I'm using the edge. I'm not flat down. I've turned it 90 degrees, so I'm using I'm using the, we'll say, the left side of the tool, just purely because that part of the blade just seems a little bit sharper for now before I go sharpening. But it's the same process. You get your bevel rubbing, and then you lift the back end of your tool up, and it will start cutting the wood. Roughing is exactly what it is. It's doing a rough cut, just getting from square to round. Alright, we're round there. I'm just going to round off this little bit here. I'm not going to go too far up this end. My screws, I use quite long screws, so these screws go in about 1.25 inches into this blank. So about there. So I'm going to put a line just to warn me that my screws are just there. I don't want to go hitting the screws, but we've got plenty for the size box that we want here. I'm just going to tidy it up a little bit. And the way you can do that, obviously we've got a few ridges there because I've just literally roughed it in there quickly. Is just take a slower pass with your roughing gouge, keeping it as steady as you can, and you'll see it takes the smaller wisps. And there you go. That'll be a nicer cut. And that's quite a smooth cut. So now comes the time when we're going to decide what size box we're going to go with. Obviously we're going to have a lid and the box with this piece of wood, or you can decide to turn a different piece of wood for the lid, but just for demonstration purposes and for speed we're going to use the same piece of wood. So I'm thinking if I go with maybe a a 60mm box, and that will give us 40mm to play with the lid, including the bit, because you're going to lose a bit when you're parting the lid off. We'll go with that. We'll go with that. Like I say, we're going to turn this just using the faceplate, and probably we're going to turn a jam chuck maybe, because we need to finish the bottom. There's a couple of ways you can finish the bottom when you don't have a chuck, but I'm just going with the fact that maybe we are complete beginners and we don't have a chuck. So we're going to use the parting tool, and we're going to clean off just where we had the live center, because obviously the live center puts a wee little point in the end of your wood, and we want to get rid of that because this is going to be the lid. Okay, but I'm going to show you a little trick in a second, but for now we're just going to take about 2 or 3 millimeters off, just to clean off where that point was in the middle, so we've got a nice clean top. Just like that. Need to go just a little bit more. This is why I left about 40mm for the lid, because I knew I was going to have to lose a little bit. Just turn it off, because sometimes it's misleading. You think the point's gone, but it hasn't. No, that's gone now. That's cool. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small tenon on this, on the top of the lid. And you're probably thinking, Steve, why are you putting a tenon on the top of your lid when you haven't got a chuck, or you supposedly don't have a chuck? Well, I'll explain that in a second. But for now, we're just going to put any size tenon you want, depending on what size your lid is going to be. I'm going to go down to about there. Not a huge tenon. There you go. So that's just a quick tenon on there. It's about 3 or 4 mil, but that's where I want to go. Now what I want to do is I want to shape my lid a little bit. I want to round it off a little bit on the top, and make it a little bit tight fancy. So we're going to use our spindle gouge. This is a 3/8 spindle gouge. Okay, my spindle gouge, so that when you're holding the back of the gouge on the tool rest straight, the center of the gouge, I tend to have it just above my center point. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of shape on this lid. Not, like I say, nothing fancy. I'm just going to round off. The tenon will be removed later on that I've just put on it. Okay, so I'm just going to round off the top of my lid here like this. Just using like a scraping cut. And then I'm going to just come down the side, rubbing the bevel, and get a nice clean cut all the way down to my pencil line that I put, which is going to be the size of my lid. And that's all I'm going to do for my lid. Like I say, it's going to be a simple lid, simple box, nothing fancy for a beginner's video. And now I'm just going to part that off, but before I part it off, we need to put another tenon on it, because obviously it's got to fit into the box. So we're going to go to our pencil line that we put. That was our 40mm pencil line. Let me draw it all the way around so you can see it. Just there. I'm going to go to my right, which will be your left, I believe, as you're looking at the screen. Okay, of that pencil line. And just the thickness of the parting tool, I'm going to cut a tenon down. I'm going to go up a bit in speed. I'm going to go up to about 2,000 revs. And because we're cutting end grain, it is a little bit tougher. Now with the parting tool, you want to cut just slightly wider than the width of the tool to stop it from binding up. So I'm just going to go to the left, just onto my pencil line that I had. The reason why you're getting a sound like that, I don't know if that's picking it up, the sound of that, it's like a vibrating sound. It's because we're on a faceplate, and it's only a small spindle, and then we're quite a ways from the headstock, so you're going to get slight vibration on a long piece of wood. Now I've gone down there, I've gone in there probably about 5 mil. That's enough. I'm going to take it just a slight bit more, because so that tenon that I just cut in there is about the width of my parting tool plus about 2 mil. So we're probably talking about a 5 mil wide slot we've just cut into by 5 mil deep. That's it, that's all I'm going to cut down to. Now the reason why I've gone 2 mil wider than my parting tool is because I need to leave a little bit as a tenon that's going to pop into the top of the box. Now I was going to use my thin parting tool, but not everyone would have a thin parting tool, would they, when they're beginning? So we'll stick to using the thick parting tool just to make it fair, which means I'm going to have to go a little bit wider again, because you want at least a 2 to 3 mil tenon to pop your lid into. There you go. And that's it. That's all we're going to do for now. We're going to part off the lid now. So I'm going right over to the left hand side, so I'm leaving some of the tenon on the lid. Let's go faster. And again, that's vibration. It's a hard piece of wood. I'm going back and I'm going slightly wider than my parting tool. It just stops it from binding up. Just get it to around about where it's going to break. Get a hand in there, just cup it, and it'll just pop off in your hand. Just like that. And there you go. So we've got a tenon on the top. This is our little divot that we're here. And you can see just a small tenon on both sides. Okay, so the reason why we put the tenon on the top of the lid is so now what we can do is we can start hollowing the box, but we're only going to hollow it down to the width of the top tenon that we put on the top of the lid, so we can do a friction fit of that tenon into the box, and we can finish off the bottom of the lid. So we can turn it, clean up the bottom of the lid, get it sanded, and then once we've turned the box and made the tenon bigger inside for the lid to pop in, it will friction fit that way, and then we can finish the top of the lid. That's the plan anyway. We're going to get the tailstock out the way, and I'm going to take the live centre out because it really hurts when you hit your elbow on it. Right, so I have my tool rest turned round. To start with, we're going to use a gouge. We're going to hollow with the spindle gouge. Just going by the fact that most people would have a spindle gouge in their collection of tools. So I'm going to get my gouge, I'm going to put it on my tool rest, and I want, when I have it turned at 90 degrees, I want the centre of my gouge to be the centre of the spindle. So I need to come down just a little bit. You can start anywhere at all. Get your bevel rubbing on the front face of your box. Then you want to just bring your tool handle out till it starts cutting and start pushing in. That's the push cut. So you just bring the tool all the way to the center. You can do a pull cut either, which means that you can turn the gouge round so that the cutting blade is into the piece. It will start cutting straight away and you're just pulling the gouge back towards you. That works nice. It can be an aggressive cut though, and it's going to get difficult with the gouge the deeper you go with the box. Now I don't have to go too deep now with this at the moment. I need to start bringing this out so that my tenon can fit in this nice and tight. So now I'm going to use my pull cut, and I'm just going to come out just slightly, and I can bring my gouge back in on itself. There's a nice little wispies there that I'm taking off there. It's not an aggressive cut that I'm doing there. You can drill with these, so you can get into the center and you can just push, and there you go. It drills. Not so much, not as much with the grind that I have on here, because, and plus the fact that these are sharpened, but you just literally just push in left to right, left to right, left to right, just like that, and it drills a hole in the center. And I'm going to just reference up to see how much I need to take off to get this to go in. I'm not going to use any calipers, just in case a starter wouldn't have them. I'm just going to do it by turn and try, turn and try. We're not far off of it. So I've got the back spine of the gouge on the tool rest, and I'm using the left hand cutting edge just as a scraper, and I'm just taking small pieces off using a square cut. Okay, we're nearly there. Now I want this to be as tight as I can, so I'm just going to take a tiny little wisp off this now. There we go. That fits in there nicely. It's nice and tight. Hopefully I can turn that on now and it won't fly off. There you go. I like to hollow out my lids a little bit to make them a bit lighter. Just take a bit of the spare wood away from them. It just makes the lid a bit lighter and nicer to feel. And also, if you put slightly longer things in your pot, then it can go up into the lid as well. So we're just going to clean out that a little bit. If you want, if you're a bit worried about whether that's tight enough to turn, you can get some tape. You can put some packing tape on it now, just a couple of wraps of it there, just like that. So I'm going to use the gouge again, and again I'm just going to take that little nubbly nub off that we had left from when we pared it off, and it's literally just a matter of just clean it out as much as you want, really. Again, ride the bevel, good pressure on the wood, good sturdy firm grip on the tool, and push down on the tool rest to take any vibration out of the tool. Now this is going to be my tenon that's going to be going into the box, so I don't want to make the ring too thin that when you're pulling it in out, it's going to break it. So I'm going to leave a good 5mm probably of a ring on that. About there's plenty. And I can afford to hollow this out quite a bit, and I can show you how aggressive you can be with these pull cuts. You can hollow out quite quickly by being aggressive. And again, you can get your push cuts in there then to clean it up. Okay, so that's nice enough. That's hollowed that out nicely. There's a couple of tool marks in there. I'm using a fingernail grind, so I've got a very sharp point. So trying to get that in there in a small box and get a nice cut to clear a final cut and get rid of the ridges is quite hard. So that's where you go in with your scraper. Most kits will have a scraper. I've got a round nose scraper here. That's a 1/2 inch round nose scraper. Some you will get a 3/4 inch round nose scraper. Some you will get a square nose scraper, which is this one. Depending on what kits. Most would use a round, so that's what I'm going to use. You can change your tools. You can turn your round to a square. And you just bring your scraper in and just literally just clean up your tool marks inside there. It's personal preference to how clean you get it, but practice getting it the best you can, because it makes for an easier finish. There you go, that's just rounded it off nicely inside too. Right, just this front edge now, I just want to clean that up. I'm going to bring my tool rest a bit closer, and I'm just going to use this blade so it's flat on to the face, and I'm just going to do a slight undercut in the way. So it's nice and smooth, and it will crisp up the edges. And there you go. That's ready for going in there. Now I'm just going to sand up the inside of that quickly. So just a quick sand, sandy sand, de-sandy sandy sand. A little bit of sand and sealer. It is quite pretty, this wood. Do a little bit of Yorkshire grit. Yorkshire grit is the abrasive paste. Most people that watch would know that. It's a liquid sandpaper basically, and it goes from 240 grit or 220 grit all the way up to 1000 grit without having to go through all the different sandpapers, which is great. And it's a good foundation for any finish that you want to put on an item. Okay, and then we're going to go with the good old Woodwax 22, I think, which is just a wax polish from Chestnut Products. And there you go. That's pretty. Take the tape off and pop it out, hopefully. There we go, pop. There you go, there's a nice finish on that. Put a little divot in the bottom there with the scraper, and can't really get the light on it, but there you go. It's a nice wee finish just on the inside of the lid. Okay, so now we're going to continue hollowing out our box, but now we need to hollow it to the tenon size on the bottom of the box, so that when we push this back on we can clean up the lid later on. But we're just going to hollow out to where we are at the moment, and then we'll slowly make the walls thinner and thinner until we can pop the lid on. We'll do the spindle gouge to start with. So rubbing the bevel on the back wall we're trying to cut away, bring the tool round and into the centre. I don't know if that's showing. There we go. That's that cut, that's the push cut to the centre. And then when we want to do the pull cut, we're putting the tool on the side of the spine and we're just getting it cutting with the tip of the gouge, and then we're just pulling in towards the outside. And that is an aggressive cut, as I said before. Let me move my fingers so you can see that. And you're just literally using it like an aggressive scraper. I have a bowl gouge here. Difference with the bowl gouge and a spindle gouge, for those that are really new, is the spindle gouge, the flute is a lot shallower. Bowl gouge is a deep flute. I have a fingernail grind on this one again as well, and it's exactly the same principle. You get your bevel rubbing, and just bring it in. All the gouges are used exactly the same. Bowl gouge, spindle gouge. Should be near enough where we need to go. Yeah, we're at 50 mil there now. So we're deep enough. Now I've just got to get it to the point where our lid pops into it. So just open up the walls just by the look of that, by about 3 or 4 mil. So it's just a matter of just gently taking the walls down in thickness. Just get a cut starting. Take the front away a little bit. Get somewhere close at the front, and that will give you a guide rather than going all the way down and messing up. You can, oh, I went around the right way. You can just turn the front to start with, because that way, if you mess up and it's too big, you can always take the front top of the box off a bit and start again, rather than running all the way down and messing the whole box up, so that your lid just flops about. Now there is no rules saying that your lid has to be a pop lid. That's just wood turners being fancy. There we go. It's a little bit loose, but it's not flopping about. I went just a little bit too far. It's not going to be a pop lid, but it sits in there nicely. So now I can clean the rest of my walls, and that will do. Okay, we're good there now, I think. Just going to run my scraper along the bottom again. Now when you're using a scraper and you're going quite deep into a box, be very wary that because you're a long way off of the tool rest, it can grab and pull your tool down because you haven't got as much purchase on the tool rest. You've got a lot of overhang, so it could pull the tool down. So just be wary of that, and just do light cuts when you're doing cleaning up in the bottom of a deep enough box. Put my lid in. think it lines up pretty much like that. And because I've got a tenon on there, a spare tenon on top there, I don't have to worry too much about it being messed up at the moment. So I'm going to get my live center without the point in it, just push it up and hold the lid on. Tighten that up, a little bit of pressure on it, and now we can finish shaping the outside of this and blending it all in so that the box matches the lid and there's no bumps and lumps on the outside. It's all a nice smooth transition. Now we're going to just clean up just where there's the box is just slightly thicker than the lid. Just going to do the whole lot. I've got enough thickness on it all, so get the bevel rub in, and we're going to reshape just the whole lot. Go. That was the push cut, rubbing the bevel. You can do a pull cut too. There we go. That's nice. Everything matches up. Okay, that's ready for sanding on the sides, which we will do now. There you go, that's just the outside, down to 240. We'll see what that looks like. I'm going to put some tape on it now and hold the lid tight. Right, so now we're just going to get rid of this this tenon off the top of here. Now we can leave a slight raised lip if we want for detail on the top, and just kind of concave it a little bit. It's kind of nice with that little lip on the top, but you know, it's the sort of thing you can play with. I'll put a bit of the design on the top, I think. And then I'm going to just make the tenon less tenony looking. I'm going to make it a kind of a dome. There you go, that's nice. It's just put like a little raised top on it. Just a bit of a feature. Now what I can do is I can sand it, and then just for fun, and because it's for my daughter, I'm going to put a little bit of texture on the top just to fancy it up a little bit for her. I'm just going to sand this up. Right, I'm just to do a quick sand on the inside just to take any rough feeling off. I'm just going to finish it with Yorkshire grit and wood wax 22. That's perfect. Okay, right, a little bit of sanding sealer on the whole thing. Yeah, that's it. That's sanding sealer done. Yorkshire grit on the inside. This is where you get your ruler. You just make sure that you have your depth marked, which is just about there. I've got loads to play with my parting tool. go. Right, so now I'm going to just turn this down, what's left, so that I can jam chuck this on. There we go. It's got that. Nice bit of friction on there. Again, you can put a little bit of tape on it just to make sure. Get the gouge in and just tidy up the bottom. And obviously the trick is that you slightly undercut it so that it sits nice and flat on the table. Quicksand. I'm just going to put a little bit of Yorkshire grit on the bottom of this as a finish. My lid goes on just like that. There's a nice little, it's got a little bit of a pop. It's nice and hollowed and finished on the inside. And there you go. And it'll be perfect for Chloe's little change pot. There's a little bit of blue roll stuck in there, but I can get rid of that. But that's it.